Do children learn how to think in their schools, colleges, and universities? It is assumed that when children study mathematics, when they study sciences, that the children learn how to think. One psychologist by the name of Dr. Edward de Bono disagrees. Dr. Edward de Bono claims that just learning science and mathematics does not allow us to think in order to solve problems. We can solve mathematical problems. Of course, we learn that if something costs $8 and you have 7 of those, you have to do 8 times 7 to get $56 to get the total cost of the products. Yes, that much thinking is taught by mathematics. But what about solving real life problems? What about solving problems like traffic on the roads? What about solving problems like how to deal with security issues when you're trying to cut down on expenses? How to solve the problem of waterlogging and salinity? Do schools teach us how to do that kind of thinking? And the answer is no. Dr. de Bono proposes that we need to actively teach people how to think. And he did that by looking at the education system, but then also the business sector. And especially at a time when Japan was progressing faster than the Western world, he studied Japanese companies and how they made decisions. And he realized that in order to innovate, in order to be creative when you make decisions, you need very different kinds of thinking processes than the schools and colleges and universities in the Western world taught us. I'll give you an example. We normally follow the Socratic method. Every problem is solved by using first what we call the thesis, and then we develop an antithesis, and then we try to come to a synthesis. This leads to a binary problem solving, which simply means that somebody comes up with an idea and they present it. And not only do they present the idea, they give arguments for it. They give arguments in support of that idea. There may be somebody in the company or in the board of governors or in the board of directors who does not like the idea. So they oppose the idea and give arguments against that new idea. Now it is up to the board to decide whether they want to accept the idea or they want to reject the idea. And that's how decisions are made. The same process is followed when universities hold debates on top. So a proposition is made, whether it's a philosophical proposition or some other kind of proposition, a statement is made and the debaters debate the pros and cons. One person looks exclusively at the advantages or the pro arguments, and the other person looks at the disadvantages or the con arguments. And then ultimately, there's voting done by the audience or by some group of jury who decide who is right. Unfortunately, not much creativity can come out of it. Why is that? Think about a situation where somebody's come up with a new idea. I'll give you an example. Kodak company manufactured not only cameras, but also the film that went into the cameras. It was proposed to Kodak very early on that they needed to digitize, that because of the advent of computers, because of the changes happening in the mobile phone industry, they needed to catch on. Their counter argument was, which seemed true at that time, that people who want to preserve their good memories, such as their weddings, such as their children's birthday parties and so on, would always like a photo album with hard copies of the photographs on glossy print and glossy paper. What happened to that? Kodak, which used to be the market leader, was beaten to death by these new companies that integrated cameras into computers. Then they integrated cameras into iPhones and Androids, and things like WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram were used to share the same memories that Kodak claimed would always require a hard copy and a physical photo album. Physical photo albums have long been replaced by digital photo album. Another example of this is how communication has changed and has been transformed. When Xerox invented photocopy machines, they thought that these copies will always be required because documents will always be printed on paper. Once again, wrong. Recently, I was talking to a friend who said, I haven't printed anything in the last 3 years. Who prints things anyway? So what we're finding is that even printers may be going out of fashion. Not quite yet, but with time. So what Edward de Bono taught us, that in order to innovate, we need to allow another kind of process. It can't be a binary for and against, because somebody may come up with a brilliant idea and you may think, oh, this is too radical, we can't follow it. So after studying Japanese companies, de Bono identified the thinking process of a company like Sony, for example. He said several meetings are held for a new product idea. So in the first meeting, for instance, in the first meeting, everybody comes up with an off-the-wall idea. So they're required to come up with strange new ideas, and people are not criticized at that stage. So for instance, I come to you and I say, all cars should be painted yellow. If I say that in a Pakistani company's board, or even in an American company's board, if I give them an idea that our cars should all be painted yellow from now on, they'd probably throw me out. They'd say, hey, this is a stupid idea. But the Japanese realized that unless you give people the opportunity to come up with strange ideas, you will not be able to come up with innovation. So in a Japanese company's board, when somebody says all cars should be painted yellow, at this first idea generation stage, people will say, all right, so that's idea number 1. What's the idea number 2? And somebody comes up and says, all cars should have wings. So somebody could write down the idea that all cars should have wings. And now a third person comes and says, well, all cars should have their own parking meters. So somebody could write that down. And then somebody could come up with an idea like cars should drive in reverse. So you can see all of these ideas would be considered stupid or idiotic or impractical, but doesn't matter. At the idea generation stage, Japanese would say, aha. And the great thing about this process is that the name of the person proposing the idea is not capped on the document, on the record. And this is now something that even Western companies, the American and European companies have started doing. We call it brainstorming. And during brainstorming meetings, we do not criticize the idea. We just say, all right, generate ideas, generate new ideas, come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And usually you would come up with something like 50 to 100 ideas. So that's the first stage. Once you have generated these ideas, the second step could be where you say which of these ideas could in fact be used and could be beneficial in some way. So if you take the example of all cars should be painted yellow, you would say car manufacturers won't require so many different paints and probably cut costs. You would also look at the choice that the consumer has to make. What, should I buy a red car or a green car or a yellow car or a white car? That choice is eliminated. So that makes the job of the people easier. You might think, oh, but that's going to cause a problem. But at this stage, sorry. Somebody is coming up with a problem with it. We're saying, sorry, we're not allowing you here to discuss the problems. We're only looking at the advantages and we're only looking at the usability. We're only thinking of how to make it work and how to make the best of it. So that's the second stage. Then there could be a third stage where you say, we're all going to criticize the idea. Now again, you see, the idea now has a collective ownership. So I don't get offended if I was the one who gave the idea that all cars should be painted yellow and somebody else is criticizing it. Even I am required now to criticize it. So that's the third phase. And I would say, well, people won't be able to recognize their cars in the parking lot. If all cars are yellow, how the hell am I going to recognize it? Another person might say that, the consumers like to express their status, and that might disappear even if you have like a high status car, but if its color is yellow and it blends in with all other different brands, the uniqueness of the brand may suffer. You take the pros in a separate meeting and cons in a separate. And what is the logic behind it? De Bono analyzed it psychologically, and he said, yes, even in the typical Western binary model, we do a pros and cons analysis, but what happens is that our brain goes pro, con, and does not exhaust to the fullest extent the pros and the cons. And it only uses it for a short-term kind of decision making. Whereas the Japanese companies were fully exhausting in one direction pros. And once they've exhausted all the advantages, then they will look at all the disadvantages. And then they would do another process. They would say, what is your emotional reaction to this? So somebody might say, well, this idea is really appealing in terms of the pros, but I have a gut feeling, I have an emotion, I don't like it. What happens is in a Western company, in an American or a European company, you're not even allowed to talk about your emotions. Emotions were treated as second-rate phenomenon to reasoning or intelligence. Now, obviously, things are changing. But the Japanese would allow this space in a separate meeting or in a section of a meeting where people talked about their emotions, people talked about how they feel about this particular idea. Now, let's say we've zeroed in on some ideas. We've really so a meeting could be held where we would say, okay, we generated these 50 ideas, which 2 or 3 ideas could be zero in on. So you do that kind of a meeting, and now you've separated. Now you want to have another meeting, and that is, what are the facts that are relevant that we need to find out? Is there any further research that needs to be done in order to make these ideas execute? So somebody comes up with the idea of integrating camera into the mobile phone. And some companies say, stupid idea, we don't like it. Who the hell is going to put a camera into the phone and is going to use it? Cameras require a very different sort of thing. What will happen to the films? As the example I gave you earlier. Now, when you're at this stage, you have to start doing this research. What are the softwares? What are the platforms that would allow this kind of integration to become useful? So you start doing research and you find that there is something called Facebook or WhatsApp that would support sharing of photographs in the digital medium, which would replace the film. And so you can see that a lot of market research, a lot of information about consumer tastes, a lot of information about consumer habits has to be performed at the stage. In fact, a lot of it has already been performed by these kind of companies because they know that any information may become useful at any time. De Bono learned a lot about decision-making processes that support innovation. It is not to say that only the Japanese have mastered the art of thinking. We have examples of people like Thomas Alva Edison and Henry Ford, who were great innovators. But there were exceptions. I'll give you the example of Thomas Alva Edison, who single-handedly invented over 1,000 new inventions. Let me just mention a few. He invented the light bulb. Without him, we would not have an inexpensive light bulb that even the poorest of the poor can put in their household. Without him, we would not have sound recording. Before him, it was considered impossible to record sound. But Edison not only theorized that it could be done, he invented the first sound recorder, first record player, in which the sound could be recorded into a disc and that disc could be played. He was also the founder of modern cinema. He knew that our vision has a limitation. It runs at 16 frames per second. If you do something faster than that, we will see it as a film. So as that, he was also founder of modern film. Steam engine had been invented before him, true. But what he did was, he made a fuel engine and put it in a carriage. That is why it was called a motor car, because it replaced the horse. And that is why also we said, what is the horsepower of this engine? Because the engine had actually replaced the horses. But that again was this one man called Thomas Edison. One day his fiancée Mary came to him and said, what kind of inventor are you? I made you a cake, I baked you a cake, and while I was bringing it, it got smushed in the box. Edison spent the next 24 hours inventing wax paper that you find in sweet and cake boxes now to cover it in such a way that it won't be spoiled. So yes, there was room in the American society for a unique inventor, for a unique innovator who was also a great entrepreneur. He did not make a single invention that he did not make money of. And he had to make it affordable to consumers. That was always his big challenge. And that is why he beat all the other inventors of his time, because he was focused on their viability. You don't find too many names like Edison in America. And in Japan, every other person is involved in that kind of innovation and new technology development. The situation is not as crystal clear today. There's not a huge difference today between Japanese firms and American firms. And the reason for that the insights articulated by Dr. De Bono were picked up by the West. And therefore, you would find that there is a very, very large number of innovations coming from there as well. Brainstorming is now a household word. Brainstorming is something that is taught in American schools. So it's no longer a novelty for the West. But I would say that trying to actively teach thinking has transformed the world.